Hurricane Francine will be making landfall later on this afternoon into Louisiana. We've been literally tracking this storm for over 2 weeks now since the National Hurricane Center put out a 20% probability of something forming out there into the open waters of the Atlantic. We've been tracking this storm ever since as it continued westbound through the Yucatan, getting down there into the southern Gulf of Mexico, and finally getting its act together. Now it's a bona fide hurricane with 90-mile-per-hour winds. You can actually see the outflow from this system as they're getting the outer bands there into portions of East Texas, and the cloud cover extends all the way up into the Carolinas. But you can see the circulation pretty prominent as it continues northeastward at 12 miles an hour and is expected to make landfall somewhere around 5 or 6 o'clock later on this afternoon. And here's the latest. If you can zoom in, you can obviously see where the current eye is at the moment on radar with a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane. Now, the hurricane hunters have been flying in and out of this system, and they're still expecting to possibly bump this another 10 miles an hour to a 100-mile-per-hour hurricane as it continues to lift northeast. But as it does, you can actually see the cone. There is Lafayette and there is New Orleans. And just because you're outside of that cone in New Orleans, you're still in the dirty side of that cone. And this has been continuing to drift further east with every update. And it does appear it will continue to drift a little bit further east as we get new updates all throughout this afternoon, and finally comes ashore somewhere in the vicinity of Houma, Louisiana, around towards the later afternoon time frame. So let's zoom in and kind of take a look at that and look at some of the high resolution guidance and the latest HRRR guidance. You can actually see the eye of the hurricane coming ashore with those outer bands and the most intense winds, likely with the highest storm surge of 5 to 10 feet of storm surge, compounding with the heavy rain as it comes ashore. This is about 6 o'clock this afternoon, and this eye would literally take it right near Houma or even New Orleans there into Louisiana as it continues to lift northeast. You can see the outer bands would likely impact portions of East Texas, and then very light on the drier side of the storm into Lake Charles. And then obviously the heavier bands extend as you literally go from Lafayette into New Orleans up here to Gulfport, and even extending into Mobile, Pensacola, and even into Destin as we get later on this evening. So if we zoom in on some of the winds, and here's again, this is the latest high resolution guidance. If this continues to shift further east, it would put the eye to go right over the city of Houma and right near New Orleans. So it does appear they will be taking the brunt of the storm with all the highest storm surge of 5 to 10 feet and the torrential rains that will likely come out of this system, and possible tornadoes with inland activity as we come ashore this afternoon. If we kind of zoom out and look at some of the expanded wind gust, yes, on the backside of this system, even Lake Charles might not even experience tropical storm force wind gusts. But if you're just to the right of there into Lafayette, and as you get closer in between Lafayette and New Orleans, you're likely going to be seeing the highest wind gust of upwards to 100 miles an hour as this comes ashore, and will likely continue to remain a category 1 storm all the way through the state of Louisiana, and eventually get into Mississippi with those tropical storm force wind gusts, and getting into Alabama, and then the Florida Panhandle as well, with a prone aspect of tornadoes. So inland tornadoes are always a huge concern with landfalling tropical systems, and this was likely not going to be any different. So yes, New Orleans is under the gun, Gulfport, Mobile, those places in Pensacola, Destin, all those are more favorable areas of seeing the highest greater probability of these quick spin up tropical funnels that will come ashore as we get deeper into this afternoon into the nighttime. And I think that just extends into Mississippi, and then extends into Alabama as we head into tomorrow. So yes, even inland, this will be right front quadrant loaded, the dirty side of the storm. And even though the eye is going to be well inland by then, the inland tornadoes is definitely always a huge concern back into Birmingham, into Montgomery, and that will extend as far east into the Tallahassee region, maybe and likely include Atlanta, parts of Atlanta, Georgia, still could get impacted from this storm. So if we break down the precipitation over the next 24 hours, it kind of looks like this: 24 to 48 hours, you have the highest amounts where that eye would likely come ashore, 5 to 8 inches of heavy rainfall on top of the storm surge. Some of these areas could pick up isolated areas of 10 inches up here, down here into the Slidell region. So you can definitely see very lighter amounts, maybe a half inch up down there into Lake Charles on the drier side of the storm. And then East Texas would get the outer feeder bands of a half inch, maybe an inch in some isolated spots. But yes, the heavier rains would likely extend further north during the overnight hours into Friday through Hattiesburg up here and towards Meridian. And if we expand the view, that will continue to lift further north and likely slow down as well. So we have two systems coming in. We've got tropical, we have additional moisture that will be coming in with a little bit of a trough coming in into the Pacific Northwest. Heavier rains extend into Idaho and portions of Montana. But yes, obviously heavier rains extending in through the impacts of Francine into eastern portions of Texas. And then right as you come ashore with the heaviest amounts into Louisiana, right near that eye. And then even in the Florida Panhandle, would likely get some flooding rains out of this deal. And you don't really need any more rainfall for them. And then lighter amounts, but still 2 to 4 inches extending through Mississippi and portions of Alabama, and even western Tennessee would likely get some multi-inch rains with this system. But what's known aspect from tropical systems, they tend to alter the weather pattern. And what I mean by that is you typically have a system that's so strong that will have a lot of substance on the backside, a lot of dry air. So that will really rapidly heat up the intense heat indices and the heat values for many days to come, and eventually bring in a trough in out west, which will likely end the heat wave for those areas out west, and will likely end the heat wave of some of those areas that I've seen, say in Phoenix, triple digit temperatures for months now. They haven't really had a break, and I think you finally get a break by early next week. So by this weekend, those temperatures are going to soar across the middle part of the country, well into the 90s, if not triple digits for portions of Oklahoma and around northwest Texas region. And there's the remnants of what likely be, continue to be tropical depression Francine by then, extending into Missouri, back into Illinois, as well as into Indiana. While the rest of you and Wyoming and portions of Colorado heat up in a big way. And here's what's happening on the jet stream. So you tend to have what they call a zonal flow pattern coming in with sinking air at the backside. So it's pretty flat. A lot of heat will be building in a good part of the U.S. But yes, there is that dip in the jet stream out west. So for those areas across British Columbia and eventually all the way down into California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, this area right here will be dropping big time. So all the areas that have been impacted with all the heat, and like, when are you going to get a break from all this heat that's taken fold? The break is going to be on the way, because here's the teleconnections, and this looks to be an extended time frame, folks. If we look at the P&A, your Pacific North American, you can actually see it dropping, which will likely be as Francine comes ashore. Here's the 11th where we are now, pretty far negative, right? And it continues to be on the negative side. So once that trough digs in, I think you remain on the cooler side for an extended period of time, And much of the central and eastern 2/3 of the US will be on the warmer, if not almost hot side. So that area where you've seen some record lows and some really pleasant light fall conditions over the last possibly week is just going to be completely the opposite, as the west is going to start cooling down, and then the east and the central and eastern 2/3 is going to be starting to rapidly warm up in a big way, and it could last for an extended period. And I think it really all starts on Saturday, especially on the backside, as the remnants of Francine will start to wind itself down and start raining itself out. That just brings in and funnels in more dry air, especially sinking air on the backside. These temperatures actually could be a little conservative. Even 104 could be like 106 there into Wichita Falls. So I would not be surprised to see numerous triple digits highlighted across Oklahoma and portions of Texas, with that sinking air in the backside, with well into the 80s and 90s, surging all the way up into the Dakotas, into Minnesota, with all that sinking air. And even in the Northeast and through the Ohio Valley, is still going to be on the warm side for this time of year. And if you look at the big picture, you know, heading into next week, we kind of see a little bit more of a mega blocking type pattern set up. So the more significant trough is going to be highlighted across the west. A little bit lighter trough with still tropical moisture is going to be funneling in into the southeast, while much of the central and northern portions are going to be still elevated temperatures with that more a mega block type setup. And what that means eventually for you guys in Phoenix, which I've been getting a lot of comments like, when's this heat wave finally going to lose its grip? Well, we have to go through the weekend, and it definitely appears Monday could be the day dropping to 98 degrees. If it doesn't happen on Monday, it's definitely going to happen next Tuesday there in Phoenix, where they would end the streak of like 110 days in a row over 100 degrees by then. So that would likely finally put an end to the triple digit extended streak out there. And once that ends, it looks to continue, because the cooler anomalies don't really seem to go anywhere anytime soon, as much of the central and eastern 2/3 of the US stays on the well above average side for this time of year. As we head towards that first official day of fall, you're still going to be feeling more like fall-like conditions out in our western regions, and almost more like summer-like conditions would continue for the central and eastern 2/3 of the US, while much of the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley really accelerates, well above average for this time of year. And then almost the La Nina type, and we were not officially in a La Nina, we're basically on the cusp of it. We're definitely seeing more La Nina type pattern really starting to take shape, really starting to start this week, but really amplifies as we head towards that first official day of fall, where you'll have a lot more active polar jet. We'll have a lot more systems come in on their northern jet stream here, where we're getting the zonal pattern now will start to turn wet on the wet side from Washington and Oregon and to Idaho and a good part of Montana through the Dakotas, while much of the southern flank, the subtropical jet, really starts to dry up, right? Which is typically what happens during a La Nina type pattern, where we'll be getting less and less systems and less probabilities of precipitation on the southern flank through the southwest, through the central plains, as well, as we start the first official day of fall. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after the storm.